Welcome to Walking the Torah Portions. I'm Tyler Merwin, and this is Torah Portion, Devarim. This week's Torah portion is Deuteronomy 1:1 through 3:22. The Haftarah this week is Isaiah 1:1 through 27. Devarim is translated as words, and is our opening line of the book of Deuteronomy that says, "These are the words that Moses spoke to all of Israel beyond the Jordan in the wilderness, in the Arabah opposite Suf, between Param, Tophel, Laban, Hazeroth, and Dizahab." Deuteronomy 1:1. This week, we begin the last book of the Torah, Devarim. The English title, Deuteronomy, comes from the Greek, which is Deuteronomium, which means repetition of the law. Like we mentioned last portion, Devarim is unique as it's mostly Moses recounting their wilderness journey, reiterating many of the commandments, while some are actually detailed new for the first time, the blessings for following them, the curses for disobedience, and Moses' plea to truly follow the God of Israel with all their hearts. This book is also known as the Mishneh Torah, which translates as second law. Mishneh can also be translated as copy or duplicate. Interestingly, though, the term Mishneh Torah is actually in the book of Deuteronomy. In chapter 17, where it covers the commandments that a king of Israel must follow, among these it states that he is to personally write his own copy of the Torah, which is a Mishneh Torah. The contents and arrangement of the book of Deuteronomy also seem to be in line with how covenants were made in the ancient Near East. The following is from the introduction to Devarim in the Complete Jewish Study Bible. Scholars believe this book functions as national constitutions do today. It reiterates and summarizes previously made covenants, is a legally binding covenant in its own right. It features parallel ancient Middle Eastern treaties, an introduction, historical prologue, legal stipulations, provisions for its storage and its public reading, mention of who witnessed the making of the covenant, and the benefits for keeping and punishments for not keeping the covenant obligations. As scholar Meredith G. Klein notes, it would seem indisputable that the book of Deuteronomy exhibits the structure of the ancient suzerainty treaties in the unity of completeness of their classic pattern. These parallels to ancient political treaties call us to see Deuteronomy as God's covenant renewal document with the new generation of Israel, those who were not yet born or under 20 years old when the people left Egypt. Devarim is the most quoted book of the Torah in the New Testament, the Brit Hadashah, where it's actually quoted 44 times. And it's the third most quoted book of the whole Tanakh, or the entire Old Testament, in the New Testament. Behind first was Psalms, quoted 68 times, and Isaiah 55 times. Yeshua himself quoted Devarim more than any other book of the Torah and the Old Testament. In the 40th year, on the first day of the 11th month, Moses spoke to the people of Israel according to all that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh had given him in the commandment to them. Deuteronomy 1:3. This is the 40th year since the Exodus, in the month of Shevat, the 11th month. The sages say that Moses died on the 7th of Adar, which is the 12th month in the Hebrew calendar, though no date is actually recorded for us in the Torah about his death. This would mean that Moses gave the book of Deuteronomy, kind of his Sermon on the Mount, to Israel in a course of just over 5 weeks. Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, our God, said to us in Horeb, "You have stayed long enough at this mountain. Turn and take your journey, and go to the hill country of the Amorites, and to all their neighbors in the Arabah, in the hill country and in the lowland, and in the Negev, and by the seacoast, the land of the Canaanites and Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. Deuteronomy 1, 6 and 7. Israel spent 1 year at Mount Sinai before being sent to the land of promise. In verses 9 through 18, the story takes a sidetrack to cover how leaders from the tribes were appointed to help Moses with the burden of judging cases and disputes among the people. This was when Moses' father-in-law visited them and gave Moses counsel, though Jethro by name is not mentioned in this retelling. As we rehash different accounts or commandments here in the book of Deuteronomy, some new details will be added and some details will be left out from the original account. And I charged your judges at that time, hear the cases between your brothers, and judge righteously between a man and his brother, or an alien who is with him. You shall not be partial in judgment. You shall hear the small and the great alike. You shall not be intimidated by anyone, for the judgment is God's. If the case is too hard for you, and you shall bring it to me, and I will hear it. And I commanded you at that time all the things that you should do. Deuteronomy 1, 16 through 18. So a proper hierarchical system of justice was installed, where the most difficult cases would be brought and handled by Moses himself. See, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, has set before the land before you. Go up, take possession, as Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the God of your fathers, has told you. Do not fear or be dismayed. Then all of you came near to me and said, let us send men before us, that they may explore the land for us, and bring us word again of by the way which we should go up, and the cities into which we shall come. The thing seemed good to me, and I took 12 men from you, 1 man from each tribe. Deuteronomy 1, 21 through 23. We see here that Israel was told to go up and take possession, but the people were hesitant and wished to first send a recon team. Moses apparently didn't foresee the downfall that this would actually bring. If the recon team truly went in to surveil the logistics of the mission by evaluating which routes to take and how to best approach, then there wouldn't really have been much of a risk. The issue was the 10 of the recon spies let fear take hold of them, and they only saw the situation from a natural, worldly perspective, and duped themselves into believing that it was actually them in the flesh that would actually be fighting this battle. This is a trap that we can find ourselves in today. It's too easy to focus on all the drama and events of the world around us, and to become discouraged and afraid, or even tempt us to take matters into our own hands, for righteousness' sake, of course. Yeshua even allowed his disciples to take up arms, 2 swords in fact, just before his betrayal, but he never commanded them to be used. Peter, in his own zeal, drew his sword and took off the ear of the servant of the high priest, but Yeshua rebuked him and healed the wound. If we are looking at situations that are around us with our natural eyes, we too will be tempted to draw our sword and attack the enemy. Peter and the other disciples didn't realize that Yeshua's betrayal was all part of God's plan to bring redemption to the world. When seeing the craziness in our world around us, do we only see the enemy encroaching on us? Or do we more see God moving the eternal chess pieces into place to set up the final checkmate? When God had Israel pinned between Pharaoh's mighty army and the Red Sea, did it look or feel like the final moments before Pharaoh's final destruction? It didn't look like it from a worldly perspective, and I'm sure it didn't feel like it either. But the fact is, it was Pharaoh's end. Let's not give in to fear and try to run ahead of God. We can only see a mere checkerboard in front of us, while God behind the scenes is playing 4-dimensional chess. And they took in their hands some of the fruit of the land and brought it down to us, and brought us word again, and said, It is a good land that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh our God is giving us. Yet you would not go up, but rebelled against the command of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh your God. You murmured in your tents and said, Because Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh hated us, he has brought us out of the land of Egypt to give us into the hand of the Amorites to destroy us. Deuteronomy 1:25-27. They brought back evidence of the promise of God, proof of how good the land actually was, but also brought back their own fears. The people listened to the evil report of the 10 spies instead of the encouragement and faith that was given by Joshua and Caleb. Moses even tried to encourage them to look at how God had miraculously delivered them and kept them up to this point, and that he would deliver on his promise. Then I said to you, Do not be in dread or afraid of them. Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, goes before you, will himself fight for you, just as he did for you in Egypt before your eyes, and in the wilderness, where you have seen how Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, carried you, as a man carries his son, all the way that you went until you came to this place. Yet in spite of this word, you did not believe Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, who went before you in the way to seek you out a place to pitch your tents, in fire by night and in cloud by day, to show you by what way you should go. Deuteronomy 1:29-33. Our God fights for us if we are in his will, and we should not fear what our earthly eyes see, but have faith in our deliverer. Moses compares God to taking care of them in the wilderness to a man carrying his son. They were living in a supernatural place. Their clothes and shoes never wore out. Supernatural manna was provided for food. Water came from a rock that followed them. They were led by a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire, but they were still given over to the earthly fear of the enemy. And Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh heard your words and was angered, and he swore, Not one of these men of this evil generation shall see the good land that I swore to give to your fathers, except Caleb the son of Jephunneh. He shall see it, and to him and to his children I will give the land on which he has trodden, because he has wholly followed Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Even with me, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh was angry on your account, and said, You also shall not go in there. Joshua, the son of Nun, who stands before you, he shall enter. Encourage him, for he shall cause Israel to inherit it. Deuteronomy 1:34-38. We see here for the first time that God held Moses partially responsible for this failure. We know that Moses was denied the promised land because he failed to sanctify God's name when he struck the rock twice in Numbers 20. The sages see this two different ways. One is that he was responsible for allowing the recon mission, which ended up discouraging the people. And this, along with the incident at the rock, barred Moses from entering the land. The incident at the rock being the final act. The other reason is Moses was angry with the people when he struck the rock, which was pretty apparent. But the root of that anger actually stemmed from this event of the 10 spies. Then you answered me, We have sinned against Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. We ourselves will go up and fight, just as Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh our God commanded us. Every one of you fastened on his weapons of war and thought it easy to go up into the hill country. Deuteronomy 1:41. God told Moses to tell them not to go up and fight because Adonai was not with them. But the people did not listen and got chased out of the land. And you returned and wept before Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, but Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh did not listen to your voice or give you ear. Deuteronomy 1:45. This is another thing I think we must understand. God's windows of opportunity or blessing. There are times in our lives where we know that God is directing us to do something, or give up something, or go somewhere, or to stop something. And if we are obedient in that time that He's nudging us, He grants us a supernatural ability to do what is difficult or impossible in our own strength. If we, however, delay or refuse God's prompting, the window of His divine help may close. And even though, like the Israelites, we finally give in to do what we've been told to do, our disobedient stalling will make the task extremely difficult. True, deep, and heartfelt repentance can grant us favor once again if He wills it. Israel was sorry, but it doesn't appear that they were deeply repentant, confessing their lack of trust of God. Chapter 2 takes us from the sin of the 10 spies all the way to the end of the wilderness journey as they traveled around Mount Seir. Seir is Esau's country, and commanded the people, "You are about to pass through the territory of your brothers, the people of Esau, who live in Seir, and they will be afraid of you. So be very careful. Do not contend with them, for I will not give you any of their land. No, not so much as for the sole of your foot to tread on, because I have given Mount Seir to Esau as a possession." Deuteronomy 2, 4 and 5. The people went around Edom and went in the direction of Moab. And Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh said to me, "Do not harass Moab or contend with them in battle, for I will not give you any of their land for a possession, because I have given Ar to the people of Lot for a possession." So Israel is told not to lift a finger against Moab because of Lot. When all the men of war who were destined to perish in the wilderness had finally died, then it was time to begin taking the promised land. Rise up, set out on your journey, and go over the valley of the Arnon. Behold, I have given into your hand Sihon the Amorite, the king of Heshbon, and his land. Begin to take possession and contend with him in battle. This day I will begin to put the dread and fear of you on the peoples who are under the whole heaven, who shall hear the report of you and shall tremble and be in anguish because of you. Deuteronomy 2, 24 and 25. If we are obedient and faithful in our walk with the Holy One, as Holisa Aylwine recently put it, we are Torahfying to our enemies, even though we may not be aware of it. Israel asked Sihon, the king of Heshbon, for peace and to pass through his land without conflict. But it says that God hardened Sihon's heart, just like He hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and Sihon came out against Israel in battle. Then Sihon came out against us, he and all his people, to battle at Yahaz. And Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, our Elohim, gave him over to us, and we defeated him and his sons and all his people. And we captured all his cities at that time and devoted to destruction every city, men, women, and children. We left no survivors. Deuteronomy 2:32 through 34. Chapter 3 then turns to the region of Bashan and its giant king, King Og. So Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, our God, gave into our hand Og also, the king of Bashan, and all of his people, and we struck him down until he had no survivor left. We took all his cities at the time. There was not a city that we did not take from them. 60 cities, the whole region of Argob, the kingdom of Og in Bashan. Deuteronomy 3, 3 and 4. So the land of the Amorites, the Transjordan, were given into the hands of Israel. This land was given to the tribes of Reuben and Gad, and to the half or part tribe of Manasseh. These tribes agreed to send their fighting men across the Jordan with their brothers to conquer the land. while their wives and little ones stay behind until their conquest is complete. The end of our portion this week is Moses giving Joshua an awesome exhortation of encouragement. And I commanded Joshua at that time, your eyes have seen all that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, has done to these two kings. So will Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh do to all the kingdoms into which you are crossing. You shall not fear them, for it is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, who fights for you. Deuteronomy 3:21 and 22. So take courage and walk in faith, for it is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your Elohim, who fights for you. I pray this teaching has been edifying. Let's lift up the name of the Holy One with love and echad. Shalom.